The South African COVID variant, more than 70 cases have been identified in the UK. Amid concern the vaccine may be less effective against this variant, numbers are being closely monitored.
We have an enhanced contact tracing to do everything we possibly can to stop them from spreading.
We'll be looking at how ministers hope to control transmission of new variants with tighter travel restrictions. Also tonight, an SNP roadmap to a second independence vote as Nicola Sturgeon faces more scrutiny over the handling of harassment claims against her predecessor. Relief and joy in China as 11 miners are rescued after 2 weeks trapped underground. Enjoying the winter wonderland, but the snowy conditions mean severe weather warnings for many areas.
It's Rashford against Alisson, and he's made the finish look so easy.
And Marcus Rashford helps Manchester United secure a thrilling victory over Liverpool. Good evening. The Health Secretary has said 77 cases of the South African variant of coronavirus have been found here in the UK. But they can all be linked to international travel and there is no evidence of spread in the community. Matt Hancock also said we are a long way from COVID restrictions being eased, as scientists warn vaccinated people may still be able to pass the virus on. Our science editor, David Shukman, reports.
All kinds of surprising locations are now mobilised in the push for vaccination, even the Black Country Living Museum near Birmingham. Used as a set in the drama Peaky Blinders, this celebration of an earlier age is ready to offer the most modern of medicines, everything prepared for coronavirus vaccines.
Please, please come and get your vaccine. We are here and we are ready and we are waiting for you. It is vitally important that people protect themselves, protect their families and protect one another.
We do know that the injections offer good protection. They boost antibodies in the bloodstream and keep people from getting ill. But it's not clear if that stops the virus causing infections that can then spread to others.
As we understand more and more about this virus, that anyone really with a variety of underlying conditions or are perfectly healthy can still get severe COVID. So it's important that we still maintain our social distancing and wear masks and the other procedures that we're experiencing, because the risk of passing that infection on could still be considerable.
And another concern is how the virus is changing. A variant in South Africa is one of several being checked to see how effective the vaccines are against it.
There are 77 known cases of the South African variant here in the UK. They are under very close observation, and we have an enhanced contact tracing to do everything we possibly can to stop them from spreading. The majority of those have had contact with or come from South Africa, and that's why we've got such stringent border measures in place.
So a big question is how to manage the UK's borders. Many countries require travellers to quarantine in hotels. There's pressure on the government for stricter controls.
On Monday, we've got this delayed announcement, yet again delayed. We would fully expect the government to bring in tougher quarantine measures. We would expect them to roll out a proper testing strategy, and we would expect them as well to start checking up on the people who are quarantining. Only 3 out of every 100 people who are asked to quarantine when they arrive into the UK actually faces any checks at all. That's just simply not sufficient.
And meanwhile, not everyone is getting the message. The police broke up an illegal rave in East London in the early hours, and they issued fines totalling £15,000. David Shukman, BBC News.
The latest government figures on coronavirus show 30,004 new infections in the latest 24-hour period, which means an average of 35,929 new cases per day in the last week. There were 37,899 people in hospital with coronavirus over the 7 days to the 21st of January. 610 deaths were recorded in the last 24 hours of people who'd had a positive COVID-19 test within the previous 28 days. The average number of deaths per day in the past week is 1,240. The total number of UK deaths is now 97,939. The vaccination programme has hit a new daily record, with 491,970 people getting a first dose of one of the approved vaccines in the latest 24-hour period, and a total of 6,353,321 people now having had their first jab. Well, Chris Mason, our political correspondent, is here. We are close, Chris, to 100,000 UK deaths now. What can we expect from the government in the coming weeks?
It's a grim milestone, and those in government acknowledge that there's a huge swirl of uncertainty about how the disease will progress, and in particular these new variants. Now, they are hopeful and positive around vaccine distribution and those numbers you were just referring to, that although they are expecting a levelling off in the number of jabs administered per day this week because of supply constraints. And what we're getting now from the government at Westminster is expectation management about how soon we might tiptoe back towards normality. Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary for England, talking today about how it's a long way off before you can even start considering that. Let's look at two things tonight. Firstly, border controls. Coming in the next couple of days, an announcement from the government tightening border controls as far as people coming in from high-risk countries, the likes of South Africa and Brazil. The expectation that people will be picked up by a government bus, taken to a hotel, have to stay there for 10 days and pick up the bill. That'll be for foreign nationals at least, and potentially for everyone. It'll take a while, though, I suspect, to implement. And a quick word about schools in England. You may have seen headlines today about schools in England remaining closed until Easter. The government says it's too early to say anything at the moment, but speaking to people who are in regular touch with the Department for Education, there's an acceptance there that the idea of schools going back in full after the February half term is already written off. Maybe in the next half term, some year groups might be able to return. That is being actively discussed, but even that is some way off.
Chris, thank you very much. Chris Mason there. Well, as the vaccination programme continues, there is growing concern that people with learning disabilities are being overlooked. A recent Public Health England study found a mortality rate up to 6 times higher for those in this group than for the general population, but many are not being prioritised for a vaccine. Nikki Fox reports.
You know, you can't smell it, you can't see it, you can't hear it. It's like a silent killer.
Everyone here has a learning disability.
You could end up in hospital.
They meet up regularly to talk about and understand death and bereavement.
It's scary at times.
These chats have never been more important.
All I keep thinking is, am I going to be next? You know what I mean? Am I going to be the next one to die?
I would hate to be in the hospital and end up dying on my own.
People with learning disabilities are up to 6 times more likely to die from coronavirus. That's according to analysis by Public Health England, which looked at the number of deaths during the first wave of the pandemic. However, only those with Down syndrome and severe learning disabilities are being prioritised for the vaccine.
People adore her.
Tilly is one of those being prioritised, and it can't come soon enough.
I get so fearful for her.
Historic inequalities in healthcare and the knowledge that even before COVID, people with learning disabilities had such a low life expectancy means for many families, any visit to hospital is a worry.
We have had too many instances where she's been refused treatment because they can't work out how to treat somebody with a learning disability. For me to think about that happening if she had the virus and that she had to go into hospital, it's terrifying, absolutely terrifying.
Deciding who is eligible for priority access is not an easy task.
The initial priority programme was based on the risk of hospitalisation and death.
The committee which advises government examined a different set of data to Public Health England. It believes those with milder learning disabilities are not at such an increased risk.
Individuals with learning disability we recognise as a very disadvantaged group. And so that's why we decided to make a clinical decision to prioritise those with profound and severe learning disabilities within our first 6 categories.
With such conflicting figures, experts like Irena and her research partner Amanda fear that by not immunising everyone with a learning disability as a priority,
we need to protect this population.
There will be many who will not get the vaccine in time.
Lots of people with learning disabilities have things like diabetes or heart problems or lung problems. I mean, even before COVID, more than 4 in 10 people with a learning disability died of a lung condition like pneumonia. It's clear that as a group of people, they really are at risk and they should be prioritised.
We're just as important as everybody else that should have a chance of having the vaccine, but we need it now rather than later.
Death after death and case after case, I just can't cope with it.
Legal action on the grounds of discrimination is being taken against the government. However, the Department of Health and Social Care says it is working hard to vaccinate all those at risk.
They should be on top of the list.
But with learning disabilities being such a complex, often misunderstood condition, campaigners believe that once again, this group of people are being forgotten. Nikki Fox, BBC News.
The Scottish National Party has laid out what it calls a roadmap to another independence referendum if it wins a majority in the Holyrood elections in May, and even if the UK government refuses permission for one. It comes as the party leader and First Minister Nicola Sturgeon continues to face pressure over the handling of harassment allegations against her predecessor, Alex Salmond. Here's our Scotland political editor, Glenn Campbell.
They were a powerful political double act, leading Scotland close to independence.
He has done so much to support me.
But their relationship's broken down over harassment complaints made against Alex Salmond and how his successor as First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, handled those complaints.
Nicola Sturgeon...
When she appeared on TV this morning, the depth of the rift between them was made clear.
There are false conspiracy theories being spun about this, and in that...
Coming from Alex Salmond?
Well, look, by Alex Salmond, by people around him, you can draw your own conclusions around that.
Alex Salmond hinted at a political plot against him when he emerged from court after a criminal trial.
At some point, that information, that facts and that evidence will see the light of day.
He was acquitted of all the sexual offence charges he faced, having already won a civil court action over the Scottish Government's complaint handling procedure. He was awarded more than £500,000 in legal costs in that case, triggering inquiries into what Nicola Sturgeon's administration got wrong.
So what started with complaints about Alex Salmond's behaviour has led to intense scrutiny of Nicola Sturgeon's conduct. The key question: has she broken the code of conduct for ministers by misleading the Scottish Parliament over what she knew and when about the allegations against Alex Salmond?
The evidence is mounting that Nicola Sturgeon has misled the Scottish Parliament. She has lied to parliamentarians. She has misled people on when she first knew about these allegations.
I'm clear that I did not mislead Parliament, and that's what I will set out clearly when I get the opportunity, which I haven't had in front of the Committee of Inquiry yet.
Both Nicola Sturgeon and Alex Salmond are expected to give evidence to a Scottish Parliament inquiry in early February. The two highest profile advocates of Scottish independence pitted against one another just months before the SNP seeks a mandate for another independence referendum in the Holyrood elections.
And Glenn's live for us in Glasgow now. Let's talk more about that strategy that the SNP put forward today to try and get another independence referendum, even if Westminster is against one.
Yes, until now, the SNP has argued that if it wins the Holyrood election due in May, if there is a majority for independence here at Holyrood, that UK government opposition to another referendum would crumble. The trouble with that is that Boris Johnson's resistance to the idea of what's known as IndyRef 2 has appeared to harden. And as that's happened, critics of Nicola Sturgeon's leadership within the SNP have been demanding she sets out a plan B. That's what we now have, that if the SNP continue in power in the Scottish Government, they'll push a referendum bill through the Scottish Parliament and be prepared to defend that in court in the likely event that there is a legal challenge. For some in the independence movement, that isn't bold enough. It's certainly not guaranteed to work, and that, I suppose, raises the question, might they need a plan C? Their opponents, supporters of the UK, say independence is the wrong priority, that the sole focus should be on recovering from coronavirus.
Glenn Campbell in Edinburgh, thank you. After 2 weeks trapped underground, 11 miners have been rescued from a damaged gold mine in China's Shandong province. The entrance to the mine they were working in collapsed in an explosion, trapping 22 men hundreds of metres below the ground. Our China correspondent Stephen McDonnell has the story.
After 2 weeks trapped underground, he took his first breath of air above the mine. His eyes masked against the glaring light, his gratitude to be alive overwhelming. One of 11 miners rescued today after a dramatic change in fortune. The first miner out prompted cheers. He was barely conscious after being found still alive, separated from the main group, which had been receiving food and medicine. Soon others were emerging. There were injuries, but many could walk, with the assistance of those who'd been battling through freezing conditions night after night to reach them.
The rescuers checked the miners to see if they had any injuries and covered their eyes for protection. After lifting up all the trapped miners, we'll go on with the search for the missing ones.
There were 22 workers on shift on the 10th of January when the blast hit Shandong's Hushan gold mine. 11 miners were trapped together. One 50 metres below them, 10 others missing. An initial delay of 30 hours in reporting the accident led to the sacking of local officials. Then a week later, miners were discovered alive, and a long, thin communication tunnel meant emergency deliveries, even prompting a request for sausages. One of the main group died from his head injuries, and they lost contact with their colleague trapped below. With underground water rising, it was looking grim when officials said it'd take 14 more days to dig a rescue tunnel through 600 metres of granite. But somehow a large ventilation shaft was cleared, which led all the way to them, and within hours they were being rescued and on their way to hospital. Stephen McDonnell, BBC News, Beijing.
Now, you may well have seen it for yourself today, the snow that came to many parts of the UK. The disruption caused included 4 vaccination centres in Wales having to be closed for the day, but people were also able to enjoy the wintry conditions, as Simon Jones reports.
On your marks, get set, go!
A race to get out into the open air after weeks cooped up inside during lockdown.
I just think it's so important for the soul to get out, enjoy the outdoors when you can.
It means literally the world to me because coronavirus has been really hard for people now.
These hills in Surrey resembled a ski resort as families came out for their permitted daily exercise. Some police forces were quick to remind people to maintain social distancing, with dangerous conditions underfoot and on the roads. In many places there have been treacherous driving conditions. The snow has fallen on ground that was already freezing and in many cases saturated after days of rainfall. It's meant that many people have come up here by foot. A gritting lorry overturned in Devon as drivers were warned only to travel if absolutely necessary. The flakes came down thick and fast across large swathes of the UK. This was a snowy scene in Newport. 4 coronavirus vaccination centres in South Wales were forced to shut. In Hampshire, some residents said they were woken up by thunder snow, when thunder and lightning combine with the heavy showers. While in Worcester, people already reeling from the recent torrential rainfall found they had the snow to add to their concerns. The snow may now largely have blown through, but there are further weather warnings in place for icy conditions tomorrow as temperatures plummet overnight. Simon Jones, BBC News.
The online retailer Boohoo is set to buy the Debenhams brand and website. The BBC understands they won't be taking on any of the remaining 118 stores or some of its 12,000 staff. The 240-year-old chain is already in the process of closing down after administrators failed to secure a rescue deal for the business. Time now to catch up on the sport. Let's join John Watson at the BBC Sports Centre. Hello, John.
Michelle, thank you. Manchester United and Liverpool locked horns again, this time in the FA Cup. If you're waiting to watch the highlights, which follow the news, you might want to look away, as United came out on top in a 5-goal thriller at Old Trafford to reach the 5th round, as Patrick Geary reports.
The noise you hear might be recorded, the fans you see might seem a little flat, but this is a fixture that could never feel empty. There's something on every game, every pass, every goal. Especially that one from Liverpool's Mo Salah. It was his side's first since the last round, ending a dry January. Manchester United, though, are league leaders, and they have Marcus Rashford, a man of vision, who spotted Mason Greenwood, who slotted the equaliser. Greenwood, just 19, the same age as Liverpool's Reece Williams, still learning, sometimes the hard way. After Williams missed this, he'd have known Rashford wasn't going to. 2-1. Jurgen Klopp had hoped this game would reignite his team. Sometimes the switch only flicks when you force it. Salah sparked. Liverpool lit an old flame. It would be extinguished by magic. A year ago this week, United signed Bruno Fernandes precisely to do things like this. So a rivalry built on close geography, sustained by competitive history, is settled by individual quality. Patrick Geary, BBC News.
Also into the fifth round are Leicester, Chelsea and Everton, whilst Burnley came out on top in another all-Premier League tie. Livingston will play St Johnstone in the Scottish League Cup final after they beat St Mirren 1-0 at Hampden. Scott Robinson with the goal. And Manchester United return to the top of the Women's Super League. Leah Galton with their first in a 2-0 win over Birmingham City. Manchester City won 7-1 at Brighton. Captain Joe Root produced another batting masterclass as England finished day 3 of the second test 42 runs behind Sri Lanka. After his match-winning score in the series opener, his innings of 186 today leaves the second test finely balanced, as Joe Wilson reports.
Joe Root, England's inspiration from sunrise to sunset, almost. Without his batting, the cause would already be lost. Once more, the captain displayed his mastery of the situation and the conditions. You have to adapt in Sri Lanka. There are things here you'd never see at Lord's. Look, not wearing a tie. Jos Buttler was Root's chief supporter. He made 55. He was out like this. The replays prove the ball went from bat to boot to fielder. Didn't hit the ground, so it was out, caught. The rest basically fell like this.
Edge to slip.
Sam Curran, one of 7 wickets for Lasith Embuldeniya, Sri Lanka's new star. England's progress was cautious, careful, but the captain knew the way. This took him to another landmark, to 150. He was still improvising, he was still scoring. Hours of toil, well, refuel. England needed Root because Sri Lanka still had Embuldeniya. Here dismissing Dom Bess. England were 42 behind. Joe Root just had to see it out. Forward, scramble back. Too late. Replays showed the bail off before the bat made it home. To score 186 and still feel despondent, that's the captain. Joe Wilson, BBC News.
And there's plenty more over on the BBC Sport website tonight, including coverage of the NFL Championship games as legendary quarterback Tom Brady looks set to become the oldest player to reach the Super Bowl. For now, though, that's all from me. Back to you, Michelle.
John, thank you very much. And that's it from us now on BBC One. Time for the news wherever you are. Good night.